morning. So, here we are. My first vlog. Decided I don't see enough people in the hobby doing vlogging. I wonder why that was. I like to go for a walk in the morning, so I thought you lot could come along with me. Thought I'd introduce myself a little bit. You know, the new channel started, and you could use this one to get to know me a little bit better. You know, how I got into the hobby, what sort of games I love, and what I love about the hobby, what I hate about the hobby. We shall see. Getting to know me, right. Well, as of this recording, I'm 38 years old. I'm married, I've got 2 children. 2 beautiful children and a beautiful wife. Right, sorry, I'm going to have to do this first vlog with the sunglasses on. It's really bright this morning. Super bright, but beautiful. Absolutely beautiful weather. Right, so yeah. So I've been playing games since I was 9 years old. I got Hero Quest, or we got it for like Christmas or my birthday, somewhere around that time when I was about 9 years old. And that's it, I was hooked. Bless her, my mum, she used to play it with me loads. Even my brother played it. Hell, my dad might have even played it, and that was rare. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I had it on the computer as well. I don't think what computer it would have been, but it was an old one. And I just couldn't get enough of it. And kind of that was my introduction to fantasy and the hobby, and then shortly after, I think off her own back, I think Mum took us to Games Workshop in Cambridge. I certainly don't remember that it was a request of mine or my brother's. Maybe she just saw the interest in Hero Quest and thought, let's see more about this stuff. I still remember that first trip to Games Workshop in Cambridge so vividly. It was when it used to be down on the old quayside, for those of you who remember. You used to go down by the river, and then you used to go through this sort of archway between 2 shops, and it was right tucked away in this odd little courtyard at the back. And like I said, I remember it so vividly. Walked in the front door, and on the very first table right in front of me, they were playing Epic. At the time, I think it was still called Space Marine. I'm pretty sure it would have been. But I just remember seeing the Titans and the really, really teeny tiny Space Marines, which I didn't really know what they were at this point. Had no idea how cool a Space Marine was, or what they looked like in any bigger scales. And that's it. I mean, I was so fascinated. Ironically, a game I never really collected, and now I gravitate towards the smaller scale miniatures games, but just so awesome. And I remember one of the tables, they were playing Horus Heresy, which some of you will know as the board game that Fantasy Flight produced in an old big coffin box, where it used to be a little chit and counter game from Games Workshop. So they were playing that. Then I can't remember what was on the other 2 tables, but I remember Games Workshop used to do these amazing boxes, absolutely amazing, really crazy good value. And like one of them was just like fantasy warriors, and it had like a bunch of elves, bunch of Skaven, bunch of orcs, bunch of goblins, bunch of dwarves, just like a bunch of each, like 10 or 12 of each. And they had it in this really weird old hard bright white plastic, and I never saw it at any other point from Games Workshop, this plastic. And to be fair, it was pretty awful, but it was great. I still loved it. and they had an amazing Skeleton Warriors box set. Can't remember exactly what it was called, but inside you got loads of posable skeletons. All these skeletons that you can pose as you like. They all had ball and socket joints for their arms and their shoulders and their hips and then their head. And so they had loads, absolutely loads of them in the box, and a bunch of chariots and a bunch of cavalry. I tried to think what it would cost now, and I don't know why. They even had like little bits of armour that you could stick on, little helmets that you could stick on all these skeletons and just customise them and change them up a bit. Absolutely awesome, an amazing set. And you could get the old Space Marines when they were all beaky. All of them had the cool pointy face, which is my favourite type of Marine. I love the beaky Marines. And they had a cool box set with all of the Marines were kind of multi-pose. You know, you had arms, separate arms, stuff like that. But all your Marines came out in this weird, like, pose, like they were, to be fair, like they were squatting in the woods. They were all sort of hunkered down and like, yes, I shall do my business here for the Emperor. Sorry, took a bit of a turn there. So apologies about that. So, and I remember at the time, I think not long around that visit would have been when the box set for Warhammer Fantasy Battles came out, which had the High Elves and the Goblins and the Goblin Spearmen, the Goblin Archers. Would have been about that time. And yeah, I know we got that box set eventually, but I don't know if we got it then or what. The timeline struggles a bit for me at that point. So I mean, with painting and stuff, I don't really know when I kind of got the hang of it. I've still got loads of my old miniatures, which have probably still got loads of my old paint jobs on. And I don't really know what the turning point was. I don't know when it all clicked, you know what I mean? When I suddenly thought, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I used to pore over the painting guides in White Dwarf. And I had a few of those supplement magazines that had, like, how to paint Citadel miniatures and how to make Wargames terrain and stuff like that. But yeah, it was the part of the hobby that I strived for most, And I started to pick up tips and stuff like that pretty quick, and started to get pretty pleased with my efforts. And it's the part of the hobby I kind of just kept gravitating towards. I kept enjoying more and more and more. And still do to this day, I don't really, with all of the CCGs and the army building and stuff like that, and deck building, I just never cared enough. I don't care enough to pore over a list or pore through cards to figure out all these amazing, clever combinations. Every now and then I'll come up with a clever combination. I'll be like, oh, that works nicely. I'll be really pleased with myself. But for the most part, I'd rather be just like painting and making something look cool, I'm all style, no substance. Maybe that says more about me than I'm willing to admit. Yeah, so then eventually I got into like terrain making, stuff like that. We were massively enamoured by the Necromunda terrain at the time. It was such creative stuff, the bulkheads with the cards. It looked fantastic, and it was kind of the first time we'd all thought like, wow, look how awesome terrain could be. It could be something so special and so crazy. The sky's like the limit. It was. I remember I made like a Chichen Itza kind of style temple. You know, I made it out of big flat sections of balsa wood, all cut nicely, and I masking taped it together like hinges, kind of thing, and sort of put it all together. And then I basically covered it in like a spackle polyfiller kind of mix. I might even have carved into it some like Mayan kind of look things. I even made the steps going all the way up it. Completely useless steps for a miniature to stand on. No use whatsoever. Basically, it was big and it was grey and it was dry brushed, but I was happy with it. Very happy with it, and it looked cool. You know, one of the things I love about this hobby is that you're never wrong. You can't be wrong. As long as you're happy with it, that's all that matters. One of the things I now subscribe to, hence the name of my channel, is a concept called tabletop standard. Tabletop standard is whatever you consider it to be, okay? But in my mind, tabletop standard is just essentially a miniature that looks good from about the distance that you are looking at it, from your eyes to the table that you're playing it on. So kind of three or so feet. Whenever you get a miniature, you just paint it and go, oh, isn't that fantastic? Oh, you can see all the highlights, and it's not what it's about. A miniature gets looked at from that distance for the briefest of moments in its time. It spends the vast majority of its time in a carry case or locked away somewhere, and when it is out, it's 3 to 4 feet away from anybody's sight. So I realised I used to stress over painting eyes and getting all those details right and stuff like that. And then I'd find I wasn't enjoying it. You know, going back over something because you've made somebody look like they're boss-eyed. You know, one eye can't make up its mind what the other eye wants to do. And you go back over and you know, I probably didn't wet my paint so much enough back then. So I'd probably end up filling in some details. And then I wouldn't be happy. I might have been like so happy with that miniature up until that point I did that. And then when I started to realise that, like, I could just put a wash over the face. You know, I don't need to do the eyes, you know. Or even just simple things like I might get a fine tip pen and just put a dot in the eye myself. You know, it's a lot more controllable and far easier to achieve a decent result. So yeah, that's tabletop standard for me. It's just something that you can look at and be happy with, you know, and that's all that matters, that you're happy with it. Nobody else. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, you know. But I'm a bit of a narcissist, and I have made a YouTube channel, so I am seeking someone's approval. That's not. I got too psychological about this, but let's be at least real. And some projects, the standard changes. What you want to achieve out of a project can change from different things to different things. You know, if I'm making a diorama or something like that, I might want to go into a little bit more effort, a bit more detail, think about it a little bit more, you know, because it will be looked at closer. It's not going to be looked at by that many people, but it's going to get looked at, and they will look at it closer up. But if it's just like a gang that I'm going to use on a board or on the table, I don't need to worry so much, you know. Or if it's like a board game where the miniatures are good, but they're not like Games Workshop standard good. They're like good for board games, you know, something like that. Then sometimes you've got to be really good to get real good standard out of these miniatures. So, you know, sometimes just some nice base coats, a little bit of wash and some highlights, that's fine. They look so much better than they did as grey plastic on the board. You know, suddenly you're more immersed in the game. You know, it's taking you to a newer place inside it. Don't get me wrong. I am in no way a Golden Demon standard painter. Crystal brushes, they're not getting sent to my door anytime soon, okay? But I do all right. And I like to try and help other people get the hang of it, you know. My favourite game of all time is a game called Mythic Battles Pantheon. And there's a few reasons I put Mythic Battles Pantheon down as my favourite game of all time. And it's a reason that's kind of, as I've grown up, I've realised has actually infiltrated my hobby right from the very start. And one of the main reasons Mythic Battles is my favourite game of all time is because I'm a big fan of the Greek myths. I have been for as long as I can remember. And I still remember when I first got into the myths. There was an old show called The Storyteller. It was a Jim Henson programme. And the original series had John Hurt with a big weird prosthetic bulbous nose sat next to a Jim Henson dog, and he would tell these old folklore stories. And then at some point it changed, and it was Michael Gambon telling the Greek mythological stories with the same dog, but he was set like he was an ancient Greek in his toga and everything, and his deep theatrical voice, and it's just awesome. Just absolutely blew my mind. It's something that stuck with me, and I read more about them as I grew up and stuff like that. And you know, I loved, you know, Jason and the Argonauts, the old stop motion stuff like that. Loved it when I was a kid. And yeah, I think it was the first point. In fact, The Storyteller, I'll have to look up when it came out and what year I would have potentially been watching it, because I think it might have actually been the show that started me down the track. You know, there was a few other influences. That old, the old edition of Lord of the Rings, you know, with the weird, like, animation over filmed product. That, I can't remember what you call that, but that was a big influence on me. All these things terrified me when I was a kid. Legend terrified me. You know, the horse dying in Never-Ending Story terrified me. But they terrified me in a way that intrigued me no end and kept me coming back. I'm not sure where I was going with any of that. This vlog has turned into kind of like my origin story, if you will. And during this bizarre time of national lockdown, I promised myself, I'd always wanted to make a YouTube channel. I've been so inspired by so many people that make such great content online, you know, so many out there that I love. And I watch YouTube hundreds of times more than I watch TV now. But with YouTube, I could tailor everything I want to what I like. You know, I can watch really specific stuff about what I like. And I love that. I can't get enough of it. And also come across stuff that I'm like, oh, wow, that was interesting. That was fascinating. And then before you know it, you're at the top of a rabbit hole that you didn't intend to ever be at. And you've spent 5 hours down some bizarre path learning about who knows what. And that's what I love about YouTube. So I promised myself in lockdown that I would finally do what I'd been saying I was going to do. You know, everybody had just been saying, just do it. Just get on with it. You know, my good friend Dan Hughes was just saying, just do it. You know. But it's scary to take the plunge sometimes, you know. And a friend of mine, Richard Simpson, he put out a tweet a long time ago now, probably a few years ago now. And the ethos of the tweet was, your first it'll be crap, it'll be terrible, but just do it. You know, your first video will be terrible. Your first vlog will be terrible. The first miniature you paint will be terrible. But you can't get to the next ones without the first one being terrible. And that when he released it, when he put that tweet out there, it resonated with me hugely. Not enough that I just went and did it, because I didn't. But it definitely made me realise that he was absolutely right. You do just have to do it. But like everything, we all have some sort of standards within ourselves. And I didn't want to just do it. You know, trouble is I watch too many great YouTubers who make me go, oh yeah, I could do that. And then you realise, okay, they've really learned how to do that. And I'm watching their 400th vlog or whatever. And yeah, it's slick and it's cool and it's so well put together. Yeah, that's not what my first vlog will be like. I have no doubt. But yeah, there's some people in my life that I would like to thank for pushing me and urging me to get on with it. Dan is one of those people. If you don't know who Dan Hughes is, look up Sporadically Bored. It's an amazing podcast with Mike Delisio and Dan, rambling about anything and nothing. And once in a while, they might talk about a game. Another person I'd really like to thank is Matthew Jude. Matthew Jude of This Game Is Broken, Now Watch It Played, The Dice Tower, Order from Chaos podcast, This Game Is Broken podcast, and Death by Monsters, which is not a gaming or hobby podcast, but it's a fabulous podcast. Matthew Jude is one of those sickening and annoying people. If you ever meet Matthew face to face, he is a bundle of nerves and energy and worry and stress, all packaged in this beautiful and handsome man. And if you ever see him at a convention and he's due to do a live show, you'll see him and he'll look like he's about to be physically sick. And then you'll go to said show and you'll be like, oh, bless him. Stressing out like that. Hope he does all right. And he will walk up there like a seasoned professional and knock it out of the park. You know, I've got some very good friends who do stand-up comedy for a living, and they are not as engaging on stage as Matthew Jude is. So when I look at Matthew and I see all of that nerves and energy and the result that it brings, I can't help but be inspired. You know, I'm lucky in that I'm an extrovert for the most part. I like talking to new people and I like putting myself out there. I have no issue with public speaking. And yeah, and I see somebody like Matthew who struggles with all of those things. And look what he does. He still manages to either fight through it or whatever you would call it to achieve and produce brilliant stuff. Engaging, funny, entertaining stuff. Another person I really like to thank is Mark Cook. Mark Cook runs a convention in Harrogate every year, hopefully, called Aircon. I've done some stuff online with Mark. We do like a quiz and stuff like that. Mark's been a really, really big supporter of me. And I really want to thank him for that. So thank you very much, Mark. Always offering to help, always offering advice, and just encouragement, you know. And I really appreciate that sort of thing. So, yeah, there's a thank you to a few people. So, Dan Hughes, Matthew Jude, Richard Simpson, Mark Cook. Thank you very much. You have been a great and inspirational help. So yeah, I mean, there's one more person who I absolutely have to make huge thanks to, and that's Gary King. All of the artwork on my channel was done by Gary. So many people have already complimented me on how professional it looks, how good it looks, you know, and he's just such great character to his artwork. You can see more of Gary's artwork on, he did the sort of backdrop of the logos and everything for Sporadically Bored. fantastic artwork for the Death by Monsters podcast from Matthew Jude, and also for This Game Is Broken. He does loads of artwork for that. But Gary, you are an absolute legend. Love you to bits, my man. Thank you for everything you've done. So, here ends the vlog. The first vlog. First of many. We shall see. See you later. Bye.